Hey guys, welcome back. So today's video is one of my favorite types of videos to do. If you've seen the thumbnail, you saw the title, you clicked on it, you'll know that it's a then versus now, which is where I ideally show you video footage, if not then a photo of a plant at some point in the past, and I'll tell you like when that was, and then we see the plant now. And it's an opportunity for me to talk through the care I've given the plant up until now, any challenges I've faced, what's worked, what hasn't worked. And in general, I just really love seeing a good before and after. So this specific topic has been requested several times now, which is an update on all my bunny anthuriums. So that is plants that I've received from Amanda as a baby plant. And Amanda, if you don't know already, she's known in the hobby as just simply Bunny. This is who she is on Instagram. Over the past, I want to say year and a half or so, I have gotten so many beautiful plants that she's shared with us out of her own personal collection, and I'm so beyond grateful. But there are too many plants for me to talk through in this one particular video, so I've decided to only use select plants out of two videos. So first one is the tortilla slap video, the first one we ever did, me and Charmaine, and tortilla slap 3. So tortilla slap 2 would have been on Charmaine's channel. So I'm gonna just take footage and stuff from those two videos, and we'll see like what the plant looked like then when we first received it, and fast forward to now. I think probably for simplicity's sake, I'm gonna do all tortilla slap 1 plants first, and then we're gonna do tortilla slap 3 plants. So I guess that's my version of the world's shortest introduction. We're gonna just get started. Okay, we're gonna start out with one of my all-time favorite plants from Amanda. And in fact, this was a selfing of her all-time favorite plant in her entire collection. And of course, I'm talking about the Anthurium Papyraceum RA5, and mine is the self. So when we first got it, they were small little seedlings, barely past like the first few leaves on the plant. When we first opened it, we thought it was one bushy little plant, but it turned out it was 2. So we didn't end up having to slap for these 2 plants. So this is the plant now. It has jumped up in size very recently, and this leaf is still really soft. I always call this plant like my most fragile plant in terms of like the leaf getting dinged up, because this is always what happens when it's just unfurling, when it like moves around, when the leaves growing, it kind of like bumps into other things in the tent. And I try to give it as much of a wide berth as possible, but it somehow still happens. It will also rub itself against the pot. I really don't know what it does in the night and when I'm not in the tent, but it obviously moves around quite a bit, and I see nicks on it way more than any other plant. This one is probably my most unscathed leaf of all time. I don't know what I did. Maybe I had less plants on that shelf when this leaf was growing, but this leaf got a good amount bigger, and that is, I think, because I moved the pot up not a ton. It went from this medium size to this larger size. And I also moved it from pond to tree fern soil. Part of the reason why I moved it to tree fern soil is because I was so excited that this plant was starting to flower. You can see on the lower leaf, this is the older leaf, there was a flower starting to poke out of the petiole, but then it just stopped, and it decided I'm gonna push a leaf instead. So I was like, maybe there's something unhappy in the pot. So I took it out. The roots seemed fine, but then I was like, let's do tree fern soil, because I've never had a plant, especially an anthurium, respond poorly to tree fern soil. And sure enough, it freaking loves it. Are you gonna be able to see it? Move this mic packet out of the way. All those fancy new roots are within the last few weeks. And the really interesting thing is that on this pot, I can actually see mycorrhizal filaments, just this like beautiful mycelial network. Where is this one? Here. Do you see that webbing? I've been using myco, or specifically great white, for almost 2 years now, and it's not very often that I will actually see the mycorrhizal network in the substrate. Certainly I don't really see it much in pond. I do see benefits of using myco in pond, but it's very rare that I actually see the filamentous growth. So that is just like a beautiful sight to behold. So if you're new to myco, this is like the fungi that lives in the soil. It forms a relationship with the plant roots, and it basically acts as an extension of the roots. So it will go out like roots, forage for nutrients, and it will exchange these nutrients. It will also process nutrients to a more bioavailable form to the plant, and will trade these with the plant. And the plant in return will give the myco carbon and sugars, and it makes the plant a lot more drought tolerant as well because it can also find water. It's just the most fascinating thing in nature, and I don't think I could grow plants the way I do. Not that my plants are like out of this world beautiful or healthy or huge, but to even get to the point I am now in growing plants, I think I should attribute like 80% of that to myco and beneficial bacteria. So anyways, obviously the soil is healthy. The roots are healthy. It's planted in tree fern soil. I have a leca reservoir layer at the bottom. I'm sitting it in one of the only like wide deli containers that will fit this cup. I would like to find something a little bit bigger because it's not like a nice snug fit. I actually have to like wedge it slightly. Like it doesn't sit totally flat on here. But yeah, you can see on this leaf, the newest leaf, it is also pushing a flower. What I really love about this plant is that it's so consistent in every single leaf. They all look very, very similar. Really round at the top with like overlapping lobes. Very, very bolate. Nice dark leaf color. Just every leaf looks so similar. Very bright little sinus with minimal veining. And then the new leaves have just like such a beautiful like rose gold metallic color, and it fades down to this beautiful bronzy green with a red back. And even though it does nick itself very easily, it has no bearing on how healthy the plant is. So I just love this plant so, so much. I recently just chopped off 2 leaves. They were a little ugly, but I chopped them off not just because they were ugly, but because I wanted to be able to fit this into a corner a little bit farther away from other plants so it would stop damaging the newest leaf. Hopefully I can start using this guy as a pollen parent soon, because that would just be freaking delicious. Next one is my Papyraceum RA5 crossed with Swamp Bunny. So we got this also as little tiny baby plants. I gotta say, I remember I was very confused when we were like, what the heck is a Swamp Bunny? And Amanda had to send us a whole bunch of voice notes to explain to us what these Papyraceum varieties are. This is what it looks like today. She is my little problem child. And Amanda has told me that like some seedlings from this batch have given her more problems than others. Some have been really easy. She's talked me through some like tight spots with it. I've repotted this from one substrate to the other like probably 4 times. I will often have like just chlorotic patterning on the leaves, yellowing on the edges. I will often have root rot on this plant despite other plants in the exact same setup, the same kind of watering style, watering when it's like nearing dry, never letting it dry out, all that stuff. They're fine, but this one just wants to rot its roots all the time. I used to have it in pon when I first got it, and it was doing really well for quite a few months, and then all of a sudden like it started rotting a bunch of roots. So then I moved it to tree fern fiber, and then the same thing happened. It was like really good for a while, and then it started rotting a bunch of roots. So then I chopped it. I think there might have been another repot in between there, but I moved it back to pon. And this is with, oh no, wait. Okay, so I moved it back to pon in drainage. So it was in no drainage pon, then no drainage tree fern, then drainage pon with a little deli cup underneath. Exact same thing happened, rotted the roots. And so Amanda was like, why don't you just chop it? Chop the bottom off and see what happens, because she had recently done that with her RA5 swamp that was giving her issues, and the rot didn't come back. So she was like, maybe give that a try. I want to say it's rotted. Yeah, it's rotting again. Dang it, it's rotting again. I just don't know. There are always like plenty of healthy root growth, like in conjunction with the rotty roots. So like I can see rotty root poking out of the drainage hole right here. I just don't know. I have 2 propagations. This is the bottom that has just popped a leaf. It's right here. It's on its first leaf. It's sitting in one of these domes. These domes have worked magically for me for butt cut growth. And then the mid cut, which had leaves on it, so I didn't dome it, but it looks so pitiful. The roots that were existing on this cutting, it looks like I can't see much rot. Not to say it's not there, but I don't really see it. And it just wants to do this all the time. Amanda says, and she might just be being nice, but she does say that it's probably not me, it's probably the plant. I do love this so much because of these like tall bunny lobes that do have like space between them. So there is like more of a sinus width than compared to my RA5 self, which is like overlapping really round. They do look very different, which is why I'm happy to have them both. And I'm not ever going to give up on this plant, but I'm still trying to figure out what makes it happy. So really the only thing that I haven't tried with this is tree fern soil. And since tree fern soil is like my magic cure-all, I am starting to think I should just give it a try. This one actively is pushing out a leaf though. I'm trying really hard not to take it personally with this plant, but it's really hard not to. But probably the next time I repot this plant will be to tree fern soil. And in fact, I might even do it this week. I've talked myself into it. So that's my RA5 swamp bunny. By the way, I forgot to say those two plants live in my tent. Bottom shelf of my tent right here. I want to do one that is more on the up and up. So this one is my subsignatum papyraceum. This one came to us as this beautiful plant. We were just like enthralled with the color, the texture. It was like very like a leathery, not too velvety, but slightly velvety, but not too velvety, but nice thickness. It had a nice thickness to it. It was almost kind of like silicone-y. It had a really beautiful dark color. I won that in the tortilla slap video, and then I took it home and I had the hardest time rooting it. It would not root. I had it in tree fern fiber, or did I have in pond? I'm trying to think. I think I had it in, I want to say it was tree fern fiber. And I remember being so shocked that it wasn't rooting because everything roots in tree fern fiber. It took probably 4, 5, 6 months for me to even start to see root growth. But the weird thing is that it was producing offsets. So I removed one for Jing. I have also chopped this plant. I believe there's another one for Charmaine too, because I would have given Charmaine one first before Jing, because all the Amanda plants are kind of like joint custody between me and Charmaine. I probably actually have some bonus footage for you guys of another repot where I'm gonna have to find which video it was, but I was like, let's put it in tree fern soil because like I'm done with these leaves being so ugly, but we have roots now, and let's put it in tree fern soil. So I potted it into a deli cup with tree fern soil and a pond reservoir layer at the bottom. It has seemingly enjoyed the substrate. It's not like overtaken with roots, but it also doesn't get as much light as it used to. I do see some, it's so strange. I'm so confused. Do you see here? It looks like dry rot. If you go further down, a healthy root tip. This plant is a little bit confusing to me, I'll be very honest. But in any case, the new leaf, the leaf that came in after tree fern soil, is simply magical. Look at that sinus, look at that color. It's like blue metallic, so dark. I don't see pests on it whatsoever. It did have pests. I did have spider mites at one point, but it seems to be good in that exo that it's living in. So it's living in this big exo back here. And I just can't get over how beautiful this leaf is. It's everything I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be a flat sinus like the subsignatum. I don't know what kind of papyraceum it's crossed with, but this kind of puckering kind of look is reminiscent to me of like Ralph-Linum Fort Sherman. That color as well. It's so nice. Even though it puckers a little bit, it looks like it just belongs on this plant. And it's just pushed another leaf. I just sprayed it this morning because it was stuck in the sheath. I just took my mister, doused that leaf with water, and it popped out like 5 minutes later. No additional help needed. So this one, I will say, took me quite a while to get figured out. And not that I really figured it out. I feel like I got lucky with tree fern soil, but I do think that like previously it was telling me it was nutritionally deficient. It just looked like underdeveloped, like it should have expanded more than it actually was, and they were all the same size. And later it pushed out a bigger leaf, but this one also looked like it didn't form properly, like it expanded one way more than the other. So I'm just very, very happy to have this leaf to show me that like it's not all bad. And I really hope, I will give you updates, but I will hope that this leaf forms just as nicely as the one before it. All right, this next one is another one that gave me some grief. On and off, it's like we go to the precipice of hell, not quite into hell, just in view of hell, and then we come back and we're good again. And then right now we're just kind of like on our way back to normal, the normal world. So this is my Mag Chris, so Magnificum crossed with Crystallinum, crossed with Carla Blackier. I wanted this plant so much in that tortilla slap when we found out the ID. I didn't have any Carla Blackier in my collection, any Carla genes whatsoever. I was like, I need it, I need it. Carla was like on the top of my wish list. It still is on my wish list, even though I have a Carla, I still want more Carla. They are so addicting. And I'm trying to remember if I was growing it. I do think it was tree fern for a while. I wasn't mixing soil with my tree fern very often. I did with some plants, but usually I would just do tree fern mixed with perlite and pond. And I would get like chlorotic, like, you know, that spider veiny kind of patterning on the leaves. I'll show you in a second, but Amanda would advise me to repot it and look for root rot. I did a repot on this plant, I want to say maybe 6 months ago, somewhere like that. I did find some root rot, not a ton, and then I moved it back into, I believe, tree fern. I'm pretty sure, because I just recently repotted again and I'm 99% sure it was tree fern. So fast forward to today, this is what she looks like. She's looking a little bit sad. I moved her from tree fern to tree fern soil, as I have been with a lot of my anthuriums. It has like a reservoir layer at the bottom where I can sit it in some water here without like letting the substrate get too muddy. So when I water this plant, I will either, if the substrate is really dry, I'll either water a bit here and then just put a little bit extra at the bottom. Or if the substrate is like not really too bad anymore, but I have roots down here that I don't want it to dry out, then I'll just put water straight into the saucer. Since the repot, which would have been probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, it has pushed out some juicy roots. It's a big fat one right there. They're kind of just like all over the sides of the pot. And I'm just letting this leaf die off naturally so it can reabsorb those nutrients. And it has started pushing out a leaf. And this looks like it's moving on to caterpillar growth. You see the leaf right? Just right there. So it's resuming growing. It's growing really healthy roots. But I'll show you, this is like the chlorotic looking patterning that I was talking about earlier, because this leaf can usually be quite dark, very, very nice, like very contrasty. This is a lot more green and lighter than I feel like it could potentially be. I'm really just keeping my fingers crossed that this substrate can work its magic on this plant and it can be healthy, and it can be healthy, happy for a good amount of time, for forever, ideally. But if this plant bounces back from its visit to the lobby of hell, then I will definitely give you guys updates on it, because I really love this plant. It is so beautiful. Not right now, it's not beautiful right now, but I know that it is a beautiful plant. Okay, second last tortilla slap one plant is my Anthurium Ace of Spades. So this one wasn't one that we slapped for. This one was just my plant that Amanda sent to me. Because Charmaine already had an Ace of Spades, and Amanda knew that it was like on the top of my wish list at that time. So I got it as like a little baby, like propagation. It had two, maybe 3 little leaves, and it was probably about this big. I'll pop in a photo actually right here of when I first got it. It was just such a dream come true. It was so beautiful. It already looked like an Ace of Spades. It had the Ace of Spades color, kind of the shape, the red sinus. I still remember the joy upon receiving that. It was just like unbelievable to me. I loved that plant. I mean, I still love that plant. So I'll show you what it looks like now. It has recently gone through a bit of a growth spurt. The leaf is way, way, way bigger than any other leaf on this plant. I have had my ups and downs with it, as you will see. I believe at one point I might have gotten thrips, I think. There was like a leaf that came out that looked really thrippy. So I've chopped off a bunch of leaves on here that just wasn't looking healthy. I suspected it of pests. I don't think I've ever had ace pox on it. This to me doesn't look like ace pox. It just looks like something else. Something else, but not ace pox. Ace pox doesn't look like this. It looks like little dots splattered all over the leaf. It looks so disgusting. So if you want to find a photo of ace pox, if you're not already part of the Anthurium addicts group on Facebook, I do recommend that you join that group because there's a lot of good information in there. But just search ace pox and you should be able to find photos. Yeah, so I was kind of stuck at like kind of this leaf size. It really wasn't sizing up much. It would go like a little bigger sometimes and then like go back to small. So this is the second newest leaf. It's actually smaller than the one before it, but they are beautiful. I did enjoy every single leaf despite it not sizing up. I want to say I've had it in tree fern the whole time. Yes, I have. I used to grow it in this size of a pot, the small size square pot. This is the pot that I was rooting the plant out in initially. And then I moved on just sequentially to the next size up. And then about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I moved it to this pot. I want to say 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was in my recent memory. So it was quite root bound in that smaller pot. So it's already kind of filled out this pot. I wouldn't mind moving it up pretty soon, probably after this leaf hardens off. So this is a new leaf that just started pushing out. I have a feeling that after this leaf, it'll be on caterpillars. I have a tendency to grow like quite narrow leaves on this one, definitely in comparison to all the leaves that Amanda grows. And I don't know why, but her mother plant is like very classic Ace of Spades. And this plant was originally from SKG, or Silver Chrome Gardens. But yeah, this one is doing so great now. I think once the ugly leaves shed, then it will actually look like a really healthy plant. Right now it looks like a plant that's kind of like in recovery, but if we just cover this yellow guy, it looks just wonderful. So this one lives in my tent on the middle shelf here under 10-watt Brina lights. My tent is obviously warm, it's more humid than ambient, but really the difference between this leaf and everything else on this plant is that it went from tree fern to tree fern soil. And really that's it. Because before with tree fern, I would always have perlite and pond mixed through. So there's a bit of that in the soil as well, and in the tree fern mix that's going into the soil. So it's like a bigger pot, tree fern soil, and then it just like freaking blew up. It just exploded into a huge leaf. I was in shock when this leaf was expanding because it was probably like around this size for quite a long time, and I would not have been surprised if it just hardened off like that. And I would have been fine. It would be like, yep, that's business as usual, but it just kept going. Okay, this next one, I am so excited to show you. This was a magnificum. So I didn't realize that this was a magnificum or was called a magnificum. So here's the story. We got a bunch of plants. Somehow the tags got mixed up, and there was 2 plants that the tags got mixed up. So I actually have the wrong tag in this plant, but Amanda has re-identified them for us. She had one plant called Crystal X Lobes, which is crystallinum, crossed with another plant she calls Lobes, which has like tall lobes. I think it's probably a crystallinum or a crystallinum hybrid. And then she had one that's called a magnificum, and we thought they were the other way around because the other one actually looked more like a magnificum at the time, I think. But in any case, neither of them really looked like a true magnificum. So I took home the Crystal X Lobes, which was actually the magnificum. It was definitely more mature than like a seedling, and I was growing it in pond for quite a long time in a little rounded plastic cup. It's this cup, this little cup here. I was growing it in no drainage in pond, and it was living in my exo for quite a long time. This big one right here is living close to the light, so it was using up the water really quickly, drying out too quickly. I forget about it. It's high up. It would grow, but the leaves wouldn't expand really well. At one point I had spider mites. When it recovered from spider mites, it was still pushing ugly leaves. So you know what? I was like, let's just give this plant a fresh start. Let's get it out of the pond because I obviously can't keep up with the watering in pond where it's sitting. A few months ago, I repotted this plant from pond into tree fern soil in a drainage cup with a pond reservoir layer. And then after the repot, it pushed out this cute leaf. It was like way healthier than the leaf before it. Like this is what we're dealing with like dried out pond. This is in tree fern soil. It has really nice like furry venation, and it was like just a lot prettier. And then the next leaf after that, I was in shock when I saw this leaf. I actually was filming when I discovered this leaf and I was like, excuse me, who are you and what are you doing in my exo? This is the same plant. This is this plant. This is not a magnificum for sure. It's not a pure magnificum at least. So I got on a call with Amanda. I was like, please explain to me what this plant is. I know there's a story behind it and there's kind of a story. So she got this plant as magnificum from NSE Tropical years ago. Like, I don't know how many years ago, but she selfed this plant and it produced just stunning babies. If I can find the footage of her babies that she's kind of held back to grow, they're so incredibly beautiful. The veining doesn't look anything like anything I've ever seen before. They're so dark, like black. Like this one, but mine has different veining than the one that she has. And she's just been silently watching me not realize how beautiful this plant could be. Like in the background, she's not telling me like, just put it in this, grow it, you'll see it's a beautiful plant. She was just like letting me do my thing. And then we finally got to here and I cannot believe that this is like the most beautiful plant ever. It looks like Carla. If you told me it was a Magnificum Carla, I would be like, yep, that checks out. She has said that she has suspicions that maybe it's been crossed with Carla. I'm looking at the petiole right now. So Magnificum has a square petiole. Carla has not a square petiole, but like, I'll show you on my Carla. Hopefully you can see that it's very, very angular. It's not rounded. So I don't see that on the plant, but I also don't see square either. There's a chance that it will kind of present later when the plant is more mature, but as of right now, it would be, I think it would be classified as like subterrete, which is like nearly round, which is so strange because it's, even if it was half Magnificum, it should be a little bit more square than that, not like a full square. But also another feature of Magnificum, which you can kind of see right here, is where the sinus protrudes like in like a star shape. So like imagine like a wax stamp. And you know how like when you stamp something in wax, there's like the flat part and the part that's raised. So a Magnificum will have this part quite raised. I see it a little bit, but it doesn't look like enough to be half Magnificum, but it has to be, right? It must have been seeds produced off of a Magnificum for her to think that it was pure Magnificum. In any case, I don't know what this is, but I do think she needs to isolate, name it something, and start breeding more with it, because can we just talk about how incredibly stunning this leaf is? And I feel like I just fell in love with this plant so deeply and so quickly. It's probably one of my most favorite anthuriums in my whole collection right now. I need you to understand how much I love this plant. I feel lucky that I didn't kill this plant before I got to here. So it still lives in the same exo. It's quite close to the lights at the top. It's not super high humidity, tree fern soil. It has, I mean, there's tons of algae in here, but good amount of healthy roots. There's pond at the bottom. I didn't have leca at the time, but also I have been really enjoying pond as a reservoir layer as well. And it's pushing a leaf right now. It's about to emerge. So I'm really excited for this leaf to come out, what it's gonna look like. I just know it's gonna be stunning and I can't wait to like be able to propagate it and share it with Charmaine, because she just needs to feel the joy of this leaf. It's, oh my gosh, I wanna throw it across the room. It's so cute. This is by and far the most surprising like favorites of this whole year. So that's all of Tortilla Slap 1's plants. Now we're moving on to Tortilla Slap 3. I just have 4 to show you. A lot of these you would have seen kind of recently. Certainly one you probably saw in the last video if you watched that one. So when she sent that box, she had a little plastic container with, you know, it's like it had a lid on it. There's moss in it and there were a bunch of seeds and we didn't know what they were. There were some seeds that were bigger that obviously looked like anthurium seeds and some seeds that were a lot smaller. We weren't sure if they were anthurium seeds, but they were. So the little tiny little seeds were Anthurium obtusum narrowform self, I would assume. So here's what they look like now. And I gotta say, they're not as awful at growing as from seed as Papyraceum, not even nearly as awful. Papyraceum is so ugly when it's a seedling. It goes through such an ugly duckling phase for so long and has such a long stem for the amount of leaves. It looks so out of proportion until you get it quite mature, and then you're over that hump, and then you can actually enjoy the plant for what it is. But luckily, very luckily, this plant is looking quite tidy and proportional. It grows quite steadily. I recently, and I will say between the last 3 weeks or so, 2 to 3 weeks, I moved it from, it was like a dessert cup, a communal pot. Both of these were potted together in a cup that was just slightly smaller than this pot here. So I moved them into their own pots, tree fern soil, leca at the bottom. They have rooted out quite a lot. It felt like a leap of faith because there were like very little roots on the plant. And it has really, really loved it. It has grown, I think, 2 leaves in that time. This is the newest leaf. It's still expanding. And it really has started to take off now. It's already actually, I don't know if you can see it, there's a new leaf poking out, and this is not even hardened off. This one is a little bit more behind. This is the newest leaf. I don't know what happened. I have a feeling that a plant might have like grazed it as it fell off. It happens sometimes, like plants up here, when they get dry, sometimes they'll just fall off and tumble and break plants on the way. But this one also has rooted out a bunch. Right here and here. This leaf is quite soft. It's really just like tissue paper thin, really soft, and it's also pushed out its next one. So it's growing fast right now. So I can't wait for it to be like a nice obtusum looking anthurium, because I just love my strappy anthuriums. I have 2. I don't think I need 2, but I do have 2. So maybe I will sell one of them. But I don't think that people will appreciate the plant for what it is, because it's not like a hyped plant. It's not a very well-known plant. But I think once it's bigger, people will be able to appreciate what it actually will look like, because I think it has good potential. The other plant we got as a seed, as a lot of you know, because I talk about it nonstop, at least in the last month or so, is our luxuriance crossed with Roughliner Fort Sherman. So obviously in that video, it's not much to look at. It's literally a seed, a greenish kind of seed. But now, fast forward about 10, 11 months, this is what we're working with. It's not massive, but I think we went like this, and then we're doing this now. This is what I think, because I am trying to like upsize my pots very regularly. I'm trying to get them into more nutritious substrates. I am actually doing more drainage than no drainage with my anthuriums, because I fertilize with TPS1, which is kind of difficult to over fertilize with, but also in no drainage, you do have to be careful with over fertilization. So my entire kind of journey in this hobby, I've been very, very diluted on the fertilization. But I want to push it with my anthuriums because I want them to grow fast. I want them to grow massive so I can breed them. So I am slowly moving more of my plants, anthuriums specifically, into drainage so that I can really push the feed. So the next time I repot it, which will be soon, but I'm waiting for this leaf to expand and harden. But you won't have seen this yet, but I filmed the video yesterday that's going up on Sunday of this week, where I was repotting a bunch of plants, and I was saying I wanted to repot more anthuriums, but every one that I wanted to repot was pushing out a leaf. And typically I don't like to repot a plant, do anything to like disrupt the roots when it's got a leaf like just out, or if it's working on berries, or if it's a flower that I'm like invested in, like I want to pollinate with. So I'm gonna wait for this leaf to finish off, and then we're gonna get it into a bigger pot, and it's gonna go into this size, which I have a good strong feeling it will result in like an even bigger size jump. The only trouble is, I've said this a few times, that I'm really running out of space in my tent. So I'm gonna have to start acclimating things out. Hopefully I don't run out of space like immediately. I would like to start acclimating things out more like springtime if possible, just because I don't want to take it out of the tent and into like the dry winter plant room. I would rather have like a spring summer to get it to like ease the transition a little bit. But anyway, I show this one a lot, so I'm not going to linger on it too much, but it's doing really great, and it's really starting to look like what the hybrid should look like. It's just such a beautiful Lux hybrid that is not quite the same as other Lux hybrids that are more like rounded. This one is a lot more elongated, has a bit more of a bluish, more oily looking leaf blade don't get me wrong, it's still very heavy on the lux, but it does look different enough because I can look at this and see it's definitely different to like my Mag Lux or my Crystal Lux. And I've mentioned a couple times on this channel about how Papyraceum is very strong in terms of its genes. Luxuriance we know is really, really strong, but using Lux as the seed parent should mean that Lux is extra strong. So it's actually pretty impressive that those Papyraceum genes can still come through. It's really hard to say Papyraceum really fast. Okay, this next one is one I have struggled with quite a bit. This is Spider Ralphman, which is a cross between Spider Bessier Af, a Bessier Af that's quite wide with very spidery veins, and Papyraceum Ralphinum Fort Sherman. This came to us as a little tiny baby, and it has grown quite a bit, but I've definitely struggled with this plant. This is what it looks like now. She's looking a little bit worse for wear. This is another one that I very recently repotted into a very large pot out of tree fern fiber, but it was in like the smaller square pot. I moved it to tree fern soil, same thing, like at the bottom. It has been rooting out in this substrate over the past few weeks. It's looking like this. I don't see root rot. Ooh, some nice fuzzy ones here. It pretty much looked like this pre-repot, so really nothing has changed. This is what it looked like. This is what prompted me to repot it. I do think it was getting underwatered in straight tree fern. Hold on. I'm just gonna show you this before I spray it with water, but you see your leaf pushing out, but the sheath is dry, and I'm just curious as to whether that whole leaf is alive or not. One second. So I just like super soaker the leaf, and if I had a tool I would try to use that, but I just don't right now. I've never had a leaf emerge out of like a dry sheath before, but it must have been like working on this for quite a long time. I do think I got it without ripping anything, but I probably caused some micro damage. So strange. It looks so tiny. I will admit I wasn't paying too much attention to that growth point for a long time, so it is very possible that was started before I repotted it and there was like stress growth. I don't know. I do have a feeling based on that color and that leaf tip being a little bit dry looking that it's not going to form very well. But there's a caterpillar right after it that's probably going to grow if this leaf like doesn't end up growing. I wouldn't be surprised if it like never expanded and it just kind of like aborted itself right at the base, or the base of the leaf blade, the top of the petiole. But yeah, this one is a work in progress. I do think it's coming back. I don't think that Amanda thinks of this as a difficult plant. I think it's just I sucked at it for a while. I feel pretty optimistic that we're gonna get back to its potential. But I really like this plant just because the Bessier is such a nice parent in a lot of ways because it produces so many colors. It's so colorful. You'll get like purples, holographic with like pink, and you have like a really bright neon sinus. You have quite vibrant venation. I mean, not really so much in a fully hardened leaf, but you get just like a really nice contrast of colors. It's like very saturated colors. And of course, Ralphinum Fort Sherman is a great parent as well. They're both very strong genes wise. And the backs of the leaves also maintain a nice red. Yeah, it's such a shame that I sucked so much with this plant. Hopefully I've turned it around, but this plant should be bigger than it actually is, but it's not. But it also lives in my tent, just right in the corner, near to the front. I haven't been letting it dry out whatsoever. Let's give this one some positive thoughts and prayers. Here's another one that it's not that I've struggled with it, but I haven't had it be like my best grower. So this one is Papyraceum crossed with Portier, and it's not Amanda's hybrid. It's like a friend of hers that did this hybrid, and I think she had a bunch of them and she gave us quite a large cutting of it. and I struggled to get it to root. I struggled to get it to grow nice leaves, but I think it started to like do okay after a while, at which point I cut it. I sold the bottom. I gave the mid cut to Charmaine, which if you watch her anthuriums video, her anthurium collection video, she showed that plant. It looks pretty good. And mine looks like this now. Not the best, but not the worst. It was looking a little bit sad for a while after I chopped it, but it looks like it's recovered, and it is in tree fern soil. Has some nice healthy roots. Like at the bottom, it's in one of these where I can keep a reservoir. It's on the top of my tent, so I like to keep a reservoir on those plants if possible, just because it's like a little bit harder to reach, so I like to not have to go back there to water as often. And it just pushed this leaf. I do wish it was a wide sinus, but you know what, that's fine. Sometimes it will push a wider sinus. This is a pretty flat sinus. Sometimes it will have quite tall lobes. Looks like it's expressing lobes this time. On the up and up, I think because of tree fern soil, and we shall see. It hasn't been like deathly difficult, but it hasn't been the most easy to keep it nice looking. Like I have a lot of trouble with this kind of thing, which usually I attribute to root health. It is possible that there is a bit of root rot in there, but I'll just observe to see like how this leaf expands. If it continues dropping leaves, we will take it out and reassess. Okay, very last plant. This is one that Amanda calls Makuna, which is Magnificum crossed with Kunaya. We got this as either a leafless stump or a baby plant. I can't remember. I do want to say it was a leafless stump, and I did have trouble with this plant. I had it in a no drainage little kind of cocktail, like disposable cocktail size cup of tree fern. It was quite wide but short, and it had a lot of like surface area, so it would dry out a lot, but I would forget about it because it's so short of a plant that it would be like covered by other plants above it. So I let it dry out way too many times. But while it was in that cup, it was growing leaves, always like this size. They would crisp off on the tips from underwatering. So then I just went on a rampage. I was repotting things left, right, and center, and I put it into tree fern soil. Like at the bottom, it has rooted out a lot, and the newest leaf is such a massive jump. Like it's huge compared to the other leaves. It's such a nice like boost of optimism when a plant like that's very sad, not very healthy, makes a comeback like this, and it's pushing another leaf right now. And I have a good feeling about it as well. This plant is so beautiful on the emergent leaves. It has such nice colors. My emergent leaf was very orangey, but I have seen pictures of Amanda's mother plant that she cut this from, and it's sometimes like very purple, has very red veins. It just has a lot of kuna in the leaf shape. The venation is very minimal. It also has quite a squared off petiole, not as frilly, not as many sides as a Kunaya lens, but it does have little ruffles. Can you see? A little ruffly petiole at the top. And I'm also looking forward to when I can chop this for Charmaine, because I do think she probably loves Kunaya lens even more than I do. And I think she would really just like get severe Q aggression over this plant. It's so cute. I want to hold on to at least like two more leaves, or let it grow out for one or two more leaves before I cut it, because I wanted to see like how the colors start changing as it matures, and I don't really want to set it back just yet. But I don't think she's in a hurry. With any of these plants, we're like not in a hurry to get a cutting, because I get a lot of enjoyment with these plants that like have yet to be cut for me, and I'm sure vice versa as well, because we get to live vicariously through the other. We get to see the plant. So I don't think she's in a hurry. I've never actually heard her mention this plant ever when we're talking about like plants that we admire in the other person's house. I'm not even gonna say collection, because like I would consider this part of her collection as well. That's the last plant. Very cute. I love him so much. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you enjoy this type of video, because I would love to do more with different categories. I actually had one list started, a then versus now, of like other anthuriums, but I thought it would be good just to have purely bunny anthuriums for this video. But if you do enjoy it, I'm more than happy to do another one in the next few weeks, in January maybe, but just let me know. I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. Mwah!